Thank you, Kopane. And we continue on this vein of focusing on the tourism industry. Now, despite intervention from government in the recently announced short-term tourism relief fund, the sector is in dire need of more urgent help. Tourism for the past year has suffered significantly as a result of the global coronavirus pandemic, which halted worldwide travel. I mean, even domestic tourism has taken a beating from this. The threat of further waves and subsequent lockdowns in the absence of widespread vaccinations will further hamper the sector. This is why it was nobody's surprise that the Minister of Finance reaffirmed the government's commitment by reprioritizing 540 million rand over the medium term to establish the Tourism Equity Fund. Joining us is Kylene Weyers. She's a Senior Associate on Dispute Resolution from Cliff Decker Hofmeyer. Good to have you with us this evening, Kylene. But perhaps let's start with the number crunching here. If we look at the Tourism Equity Fund, the reprioritizing of 550 million rand, now based on reports that were from the Plettenberg Bay, they're saying that their hospitality industry over a period of 3 months, which is October, November and December of last year, 2020, that they estimate that they've lost over 674 million rand. Now juxtapose that figure to the 540 million rand that the finance minister is talking about. This looks like a minuscule figure that can hardly tackle the widespread problems that are being faced by the industry at large. Your reaction?
Yes, absolutely. And in addition to that, unfortunately this relief may have come a little too late. In January this year, the Tourism Department announced the creation of this Tourism Equity Fund, which aims to support small stakeholders in the industry. And, to that end, government, together with SA's major banks, financed the fund with 1.2 billion. But like you say, it is actually just a drop in the ocean. But just to take it back, I just want to take a number crunch and go through this timeline that the industry has gone through, just to give you the full picture of the knocks that the industry has taken. So, the current reality is that most businesses in the tourism and hospitality industry are suffering of severe financial distress. And in addition to this, the reality is that they've been suffering this financial distress for the past year. So the decline in the industry first started at the beginning of 2020 with the uncertainty surrounding travel, and obviously in light of this fast-growing virus that we knew very little about at the time. Then we went into an extremely hard lockdown where SA's tourism industry lost almost 70 billion rand just in those few months. And then in the months that followed the hard lockdown, we were in some sort of a lockdown with various severe restrictions in place, limiting our movement as a whole. And of course, most other countries had also implemented lockdowns with severe restrictions. So, the tourism industry optimistically weathered this COVID-19 storm in 2020, and we're living in the hope that by December, travel would be on the rise for the festive season. Everyone's finally going on holiday after a tough year, and that the effects of COVID on travel and movement of people would have dwindled. And as we all saw, this was absolutely not the case. So here comes December, and with the rising COVID numbers, Cyril Ramaphosa announces that all beaches will be closed. And so thereafter, many people cancel their December holidays entirely, because who wants to go to a beach holiday if you can't go to the beach? And then towards the end of December, we went back into a lockdown level 3, and Cyril then announced the ban on liquor. And then to make matters worse, due to this new COVID variant, which was first identified in South Africa, many other countries have banned travel to and from South Africa. So essentially, the uptake which the tourism industry expected to have experienced in December just did not materialize. And unfortunately, once again, I think the industry is living in the hope that possibly for Easter holidays, we'll see some sort of relief with people being able to go on holiday. However, we're dealing with these looming rumors of a potential third wave and a possible lockdown during the Easter period. And of course, the question then is, how far do these businesses kick the can down the road? urgent action needs to be taken. And unfortunately, this fund is not going to be the thing that saves businesses in this industry, especially because there's a certain criteria that needs to be achieved before businesses can actually benefit from this fund.
What's quite clear, Kylene, is that there needs to be a short-term and a long-term strategy approach to the rescue of the industry. Let's chat about that in just a moment. And if you could perhaps just wrap your brain around what a business rescue plan for the industry as a whole could look like. You mentioned there the potential of another lockdown, during the Easter period. That is usually a time when people do take their holidays, the children are out of school, they usually take their vacations. But this may not be the case this year once again, because in as much as it is a holiday period, it's also a potential super spreader period where people gather for their religious gatherings and their religious meetings. And seeing that the COVID-19 vaccine hasn't quite rolled out to the greater population, this will still be a threat for South Africa. So let's chat about that in just a moment. That's Kylene Weyers there as we focus on the tourism industry. We'll be right back in just a moment. Let's continue now with our chat about the tourism sector with Kylene Weyers, Senior Associate on Dispute Resolution from Cliff Decker-Hofmeyer. Karen, good to have you back with us. Now, before the break, we were talking about the state of the tourism industry and just juxtaposing the amount of 540 million rand that has been earmarked for the Tourism Equity Fund, and also just looking at the various challenges that the industry is facing. From your perspectives as individuals who are involved in business rescue, what would a short-term rescue plan for the tourism industry look like as opposed to a long-term rescue plan?
So just to say that the most important thing when it even gets to a business rescue plan is that in these circumstances, timely intervention is absolutely essential. Business rescue can really, really work well when applied correctly and when used in the right circumstances, and really can be used to save a business. And so for those directors who do decide to take action sooner rather than later, business rescue is more likely to work for them and actually ultimately save their business in the long run. Now, the business rescue plan will essentially set out what the plan is to save a particular business. And obviously, we are dealing with really incredibly tough and challenging circumstances at the moment. But one of the instances that has really assisted this industry at this stage has been that there has been a substantial rise in investment opportunities for both local and foreign investors. South Africa is actually currently seen as this new unsaturated market for distressed asset investment, allowing companies in distress to consider selling off assets or the business as a whole, as there are many willing buyers. And so business rescue creates a mechanism whereby a deal for the sale of assets or the business can actually be concluded far more swiftly than if otherwise, outside of the business rescue process. You have to look at each business on a case-by-case basis. So there's no way that we can say that a business rescue will take 3 months or 4 months or 5 months. It will all depend on the facts and circumstances of a particular rescue. And that is where the role of a business rescue practitioner is so important, because they will look at the company's affairs together with us as legal representatives and work out the best possible business rescue plan for this particular business. And so from a timing perspective, there's no way to say how long it will take. But the awesome thing about business rescue is that it isn't meant to be a process that is to be prolonged and dragged out. If done correctly, and if you've got a good business rescue practitioner, good legal team on your side, the business rescue process can actually be wrapped up a lot quicker than what I think the public is led to believe.
So let's clarify here, Kylene, what the objectives would be. Would the objective be to liquidate the business, to sell its assets, or are the objectives to resuscitate the business and keep it within the ownership of its current owners?
So we have to look at what the Companies Act actually envisages when it talks about saving a company. So we've got a primary goal and a secondary goal. And by saving the business, the primary goal will always be to restore the company to profitability and where it can continue going, as a going concern and on a solvent basis. The second objective of business rescue, and what is still classified as saving the business, is if the business rescue will ensure a better return for the company's creditors than would an immediate liquidation. Liquidation is never the ultimate result because you lose all the value of the business. Jobs are lost. It is an actual culling of the business. Nothing is left over. It's basically taken to its very shell form. Whereas in a business rescue, the aim is to preserve the value that is in the company, to preserve the jobs, and to, even if the company cannot continue operating on a solvent and profitable basis as it was before, for example, COVID, that the business rescue plan will ensure a better return for creditors, in the sense that they would, for example, let's say, get 70 cents in the rand in a business rescue as opposed to, for example, 2 cents in the rand in a liquidation, or absolutely nothing at all. And so it really does depend how far down the line the company is in terms of its financial distress. If there's enough of the business to save, we can restore it to its previous profitability. But if that is not possible, then the option of selling the assets, selling the business as a going concern and transferring the employees in terms of the Labour Relations Act, then that can take place. And the creditors will obtain more in a business rescue than they would have in a liquidation.
Now, Kylene, I'm sure you'll agree with me that the phrase business rescue has really become common parlance in South Africa. One thinks of SAA, that comes to mind. How successful have these business rescue efforts been traditionally in South Africa?
Look, I'll admit that when business rescue as a mechanism first came on the scene, there were a lot of teething issues. And, the uptake in making use of Chapter 6 provisions that deal with business rescue has really been slow in some respects. And I think there has been a negative stigma attached to business rescue sometimes. I think a lot of what the public will read about and hear in the media is that, business rescue is a delaying procedure. There are many delays. The business rescue practitioners are charging excessive fees. Employees are not getting paid. Creditors are not happy. But I think that people are starting to realize that this process is not merely a prequel to an inevitable liquidation, but it's actually a means of avoiding liquidation. And it's really a great mechanism to use to rehabilitate financially distressed companies that do genuinely have reasonable prospects of being saved. I've been in this industry for 7 years now, and I do genuinely believe that business rescue has been a breath of fresh air for the insolvency sector, and especially for a country like South Africa, where we've had this struggling economy for so long now. It's created a way for companies that are in financial distress, but that do have genuine businesses to save, for them to actually be saved, and then to continue either operating, or for the business to, for example, to be sold, or for assets to be sold, for creditors to be left off in a better place. And
sorry, Kylene, let me just hop in here for a moment. Talk to us about the type of measures that government has put in place specifically for the tourism industry, and how those relief efforts by government can perhaps be combined with the type of expertise and guidance that a business rescue practitioner perhaps might be able to offer a business in the tourism industry.
So just to take it back to this Tourism Equity Fund, and I really do think that it's a great initiative, and I think coupled with the expertise of business rescue practitioners being able implement business rescue plans, there is light at the end of the tunnel for businesses in the industry. Government with our major banks have financed this fund with 1.2 billion rand, and the fund aims to support accommodation, hospitality-related services, and also tour operators in the industry by providing financial assistance. Obviously, there are limitations in the sense that the fund has been established mainly to assist small businesses in the sector. There are various criteria, so not everybody will be able to apply to this fund. So for example, the entities that apply must be South African companies. They must be 100% South African owned. They must be predominantly Black owned and owned and managed and controlled. And so, there will be certain businesses that don't actually qualify. But the advice to these businesses that don't necessarily qualify for this fund, because obviously, government cannot save all businesses, there's just not enough money to do so. Businesses that don't qualify should immediately start considering their options and consider business rescue as an option, and even an informal restructuring as an alternative. And so key in this is for businesses, like I said earlier, to take that timely intervention and to approach specialists in the field. We at Cliff Decker, and especially my team dealing with business rescue and insolvency, always advise clients that even if they are unsure about their next steps or whether business rescue is a viable option, and given the risk, the reputational risk that might be involved, rather take timely intervention and consult with specialists in the industry who can then look at the business collectively and decide what's the best.
I must say, Kylene, it's a bit of a catch-22 situation here, because in as much as there may be advantages to consulting experts such as yourself, what about the costs? Because already here you'll find that these business owners are already out of pocket. Will they even be able to afford your services?
Well, absolutely. I mean, this is the heartbreaking thing about COVID, I think, is that, directors have invested all their time, money, efforts and energies into their businesses over many, many years. And now they're grappling with this very difficult situation of having to even consider a formal process like business rescue in the first place, when they don't even have money to run their businesses. Now they need to fork out money for legal fees and, of course, business rescue practitioner fees. This process isn't for free. And that is why it is so important to even have that first consultation, with a specialist, just to make sure that they are on the right track to save them money in the long run. Because the point of this is that, yes, you might have to pay to see a specialist and to then put the company into business rescue and pay for business, or the company will have to pay for the business rescue practitioner fees. But it is ultimately going to save a business much more money in the long run if they don't take timely intervention and they leave it right until the end, and then there's nothing left to save. And unfortunately, then we have to advise these companies that liquidation is the only option, and then everybody loses everything. Nobody wins in a liquidation most of the time.
Kylene, thank you so much for your expert advice there. That's Kylene Weyers, Senior Associate on Dispute Resolution from Cliff Decker Bear, highlighting there the importance of timing and early intervention. Our focus this evening being the tourism industry.